Did you know that Echo was the first deaf Native American superhero in the Marvel Universe ever? And what makes her even more interesting is that she has the unique ability to mimic anybody's physical movement. She's pretty much like an indigenous Taskmaster, which is just so freaking awesome. What the? I thought I turned this thing off. Hold on, sorry, this is so rude of me. Hey, what's up? She's not gonna have any of her abilities from the comics? An actress that never acted before? Hold on, I gotta go. What the fuck? Look, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Echo has to be one of the blandest shows in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And trust me, that is not an easy shoe to fill.
Definitely not this one.
You don't have to say definitely like that.
Originally, this was gonna be a review of the entire series, but the first episode was such a snooze fest that I couldn't even bear to watch the second one. I guess there's a reason that this was released on both Disney Plus and Hulu. Now, let's be clear. I'm not the type of guy who can hate watch a show simply for content. If I'm gonna devote my time to something, it has to be something I can find at least somewhat enjoyable. I mean, life is short enough as it is. I can't go investing all of my time into things I hate. I already have my ex-wife to deal with, am I right?
Please stop, please stop.
Echo, sadly enough, can't even fall into the so bad it's good category. And given the current state of the MCU, as other YouTubers might call it, it is becoming impossible to deny that the franchise has begun to morph into something vastly different than what it was in the earlier days.
Avengers! Assemble.
However, Echo with this first episode seems to be setting a new low and at a rather unexpected pace. Well, speaking of which. The first episode of Echo is a roller coaster ride that can't seem to get its finger off of the fast forward button. I mean, the first episode is literally like if somebody took a full season's worth of plot and crammed it into one episode, like they were trying to fill a Chipotle burrito or something. Let's take the horrific car crash that kicks things off as an example. I mean, in most cases, this would be a poignant, heart-wrenching moment. If it were well written, that is. But in Echo, it falls flat on its face because we barely know these characters. I'm not exaggerating right now. We only get 6 minutes and 13 seconds of screen time before this life-altering crash occurs. And not to mention that 3 minutes of those 6 minutes are all about Maya's ancestors, which are pretty much totally unrelated to the plot at this point. How in the world is 3 minutes of footage supposed to be enough time to leave us with any emotional attachment to these characters? I'll tell you how. It's not. 3 minutes isn't a long enough time to get almost anything done. Well,
That's disgusting.
jokes aside, the death of her parents should be a defining moment in Echo's life. It should be a profound catalyst for her transformation. But both her mother and her father literally die before the first episode is even halfway through. If this isn't the laziest way to set up a tragic backstory, then I don't know what is. And if that wasn't bad enough, we get the same thing with Echo's transformation into a supposed skilled fighter. We don't see her do much of anything except stare blankly into the camera. I mean, she looks like me when I'm 6 slices deep during movie night, and that is not a pretty sight. Instead, we're supposed to just accept that this sweet little girl we briefly met has somehow become an unstoppable force that can carry her weight with the likes of Daredevil. The absence of a training montage or any glimpse into her journey robs us of the opportunity to root for her, to to watch her grow and to overcome her challenges. Then there's the question of the sign language in the show. Look, I'm obviously not against a deaf protagonist that has to sign. At the end of the day, I think having a more diverse array of characters in any film is a good idea, if done the right way and for the right reasons.
I want more.
But everyone, and I mean everyone that Echo meets, from Kingpin's men to her cousins to old friends, knows how to sign. Everyone except the bad guy at the roller rink, coincidentally, because I guess only bad guys don't take an ASL class as an elective in high school? I mean, what is the show even trying to say here? That if you don't know how to sign, you're evil? Honestly, I feel like Maya's struggle with being deaf could have been made out to be so much more important to her character, and something that we would have empathized with throughout this series as an audience. But instead, her disability is used as a convenient plot device that ends up raising more questions than it answers. On second thought though, I guess it makes sense. Our female protagonist can't possibly have struggles now, can she? Giving characters actual arcs and flaws isn't what makes them interesting, right? We'd much rather see her get shot and then just wrap the wound up with a super basic bandage and then just drive herself home. We'd much rather see her almost crash from exhaustion and then when she gets home, literally stitch up the wound herself with dental floss, right? All in all though, the biggest offender in this show isn't even the dental floss or the reckless driving. The biggest offender has to be the time jumps. The episode leaps from one period to another, skipping over months and years of potentially important character growth. It's a disorienting storytelling choice that makes the narrative feel disjointed and hard to follow. The storyline of Echo feels more like a checklist being hastily ticked off rather than a well-crafted narrative. And the worst part is that the show definitely had potential with its interesting protagonist and intriguing premise. However, it fails to deliver on its promise because of its rushed plot and lack of character development. Speaking of character development though, you see, Maya is a young woman with a tragic backstory, which obviously isn't the problem here. The problem is that the show's execution of the story leaves so freaking much to be desired. We don't get any substantial amount of screen time dedicated to her relationship with her parents, her relationship with her friends, or even Kingpin, and it's hard to feel anything for her losses because of it. Her journey from childhood to her adulthood seems jarringly out of place, and as a result, Maya, the protagonist, ends up being the least interesting character on her own show. Look, when Biscuit ends up being more engaging and interesting than you are, you know you have a serious problem. Her lack of expressions, even in the face of adversities and tragedies, makes her come off as monotonous as me in the Trader Joe's checkout line. But luckily for us, and also the showrunners, this first episode also introduces us to Kingpin, whose presence is so substantial that even when it's just his hand on the screen, it's captivating. Vincent D'Onofrio has been one of the best additions to the MCU by a long shot, and the fact that he's been resorted to like a side character in Hawkeye and now Echo, Marvel should be ashamed of themselves. But that leaves us with just another question. Why is a side character outshining our main protagonist? What's worse is that the show doesn't just falter with character development, but also with character behaviors. There is a super cringe scene where a guard sexually assaults Maya literally in front of everyone. He doesn't even try to hide it, and all it does is come across as a glaring example of how tone deaf the writers and showrunners are. No pun intended. I mean, his blatant disregard for decency just feels out of place and uncomfortable. Like, I felt so weird watching this, and I think it's especially ironic given that this show is rated R, but somehow magically clothes its people in the beginning intro sequence. Like, what even is that? That genuinely had me dying right off rip. I mean, where did those clothes come from? Did they go to their local tailor or something? Like, them having clothes doesn't even make sense. These people were created mere seconds ago. But I digress, or should I say, digress. Now, we're also treated to an epic appearance from Daredevil, played by Charlie Cox, finally in his red suit. This one scene right here is actually so awesome. The fight choreography is so good. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Like, how is this the same show as everything else that was included in that first episode? But as epic as it is to see Daredevil, it feels jam-packed into an already crammed episode, as if they're trying to distract us from the show's shortcomings with fan-favorite characters. I think the saddest part for me, however, is the failed potential. A few bright spots can't compensate for the show's overall lack of character development and emotional depth. Even the rapid pacing of the show, which skips over countless years and months, is more of a hindrance than a help, and it leaves us unable to connect with the characters. At the end of the day, Echo fails to engage us or stir up any substantial emotional response. The show's characters, much like its plot, are bland and unseasoned, unfortunately leaving us with a taste that is